There you go. 4-punch, 5-punch, 6-punch combination. Body shot, bang, 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 bang.
Telling him not to counterpunch.
Boom! Will Rackman get up?
Iron. You're going through all the instructions. This is for the championship of the world. I expect a tough, clean fight. Protect yourself at all times. Any questions from the challenger?
Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Fight City Podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Foose. Today we have a two-part episode. First, I will be joined with TheFightCity.com contributor Alden Chodash, and we'll be discussing the upcoming super bantamweight bout between Inoue and Stephen Fulton. We'll also be discussing the long-awaited for welterweight showdown featuring Errol Spence Jr. and Terrence Crawford. Later in the show, I will be joined with my own brother, Kevin Foose, to review the top-ranked card that took place in Oklahoma this past weekend. And we'll definitely be diving into that controversial decision featuring George Kamobosos Jr. We hope you enjoy the show. Alden, my man, how are you?
I'm good. How are you, Jeff?
Wonderful, especially since we have two huge fights. I think it's fair to say historically huge for historical context for boxing coming up this week and this weekend. I feel like we're now getting spoiled as boxing fans, but let's jump right into Inoue Fulton. Inoue is making a leap, right, from the bantamweight division to the super bantamweight or light featherweight division, depending on what term you're familiar with no tune-up, but going for the guy who is arguably the guy to beat at the 122-pound division, Stephen Fulton. What do you think of this matchup?
It's interesting that you mentioned that Inoue is moving up to 122 pounds. Fulton was on the verge of moving up to 126 to fight Brandon Figueroa a second time. So, both fighters are very big. Actually, I'll take a step back. Stephen Fulton is very big for 122 pounds. Inoue, he seems like he was very big for 118 because of how devastating his power was at 118, but he really isn't. I mean, Fulton is the bigger physical fighter in there. So I think that'll add a very interesting potential foil to what Inoue is used to, in the sense that he just greatly overpowers his opposition. I'm very excited for this fight because, as Inoue said, Fulton's never faced a fighter like me, and I've never faced a fighter like Fulton. And as I kind of look into both of their recent fights, I mean, he's kind of right. I mean, it's very hard to find a fight in which you can kind of pinpoint and say, well, I think he's going to have success because of how Fulton performed against X or how Inoue performed against Y. Both are just tremendous fighters, and they're really being tested against kind of a new element against them. With that being said, I do give Inoue the nod in this fight because from what I've seen from him so far, he's just a little more improvisational, I'd say. I think he thinks a little faster in there. He makes adjustments a little faster. Obviously, the explosive powers to the head and body is always going to be to his advantage. It might not be as devastating in the early rounds as it was at 118, 115, and 108. But I give him the edge. I think he might be able to score a knockout weight, particularly to the body, because I did see in the Figueroa fight, Fulton was broken down and hurt to the body in the latter rounds. To his credit, he fought through it, but with the kind of devastating power that Inoue brings, I'm not sure if he will be able to, particularly with the hometown advantage and everything Inoue has going for him in terms of his momentum and budding superstar status.
Right. I'm glad that you brought the mentioned Fulton was about to move up to the 126 division. He's obviously the bigger guy, right? Inoue is coming up here as a deficit on his end. Looking at the size comparison, I guess, with Fulton and Inoue has been in this kind of position before. So, he's budding as an international superstar, getting a lot of attention since 2017, 2018, 2019, definitely with the World Boxing Super Series, with his last fight against Nonito Donaire. But Nonito Donaire, right, he has similar, I want to say, attributes in terms of size that Stephen Fulton has, right? Close to the same height. I think just a little bit shorter on the reach advantage. So this, I want to say this isn't anything new for Inoue in terms of opponent for size disadvantage. However, Fulton brings a different capacity than Nonito Donaire, right?
Yeah,
Fulton, what is he averaging? 1,000 punches per fight?
Wouldn't surprise me.
Right. And so seeing, I like that you mentioned that Fulton during the latter rounds against Brandon Figueroa was starting to wane a bit. However, no one has been able to ever take him out. He is undefeated. He does surprisingly only have like a 38% KO rate. So out of 22 opponents, only 8 of them have ever been knocked out. Does he have enough pop, I guess, is what I'm going to ask, to keep an aggressive Inoue off of him for all 12 rounds?
Well, I don't think it's going to be one punch that does it. I think he has the ability to present a lot of physical strength towards his opposition, even if he's not able to, really hurt his opposition. Kind of like a Tim Bradley, kind of not completely like Tim Bradley, but he has the ability to smother and be physical like a Tim Bradley or a fighter like that. The thing about Nonito Donaire, that's a good point, because Donaire has been a champion as high as 126, and I think he's even competed at 130, although I may be mistaken. Nonito Donaire is not as physical of a fighter as Stephen Fulton is. He really relied on his crispy power and boxing finesse to have success in those higher weight divisions. Whereas Stephen Fulton, he's definitely knocking on the door of being a featherweight. It seems like he's way too big to be a 122 fighter anyways. But it looks like his success would be more based on the physical attributes that he brings to the table in terms of his strength when he needs to, and he could also box when he needs to. So I'm not sure if any one punch is going to really get Inoue's respect, in the sense that Inoue is going to have to change up and just stay on his back foot or what have you. But I am interested to see how his ability to kind of maul Inoue in spurts and fight on the inside and use his advantage in physical strength will cause Inoue to have to make adjustments.
Yeah, fair. Do you think, let me ask you this. In terms of previous opponents, for both of them, which opponents have best prepared both Inoue and Fulton for this specific moment?
I think definitely Donaire is... I mean, when you watch the first fight with Donaire, you can really see Inoue have to overcome adversity. I mean, obviously the orbital injury early on was highly significant. The fact that Donaire is a very crafty, gifted boxer puncher with a huge punch, that's another obstacle that he had to overcome. Really, for a fight like this, in which Inoue has said that they've never really faced each other's style, you have to look for the type of opposition that caused them to have to make the most adjustments. And I think Donaire, really forced that side out of Inoue, and Inoue, I think he, emerged with flying colors, and came back in the second fight and put an exclamation mark on it, and really showed his development as a result of their first fight and all the adversity it brought. Probably for the same reasons, I'd say Brandon Figueroa, although he's nothing stylistically like Inoue. Just the strength, the pressure, the fact that he did have Fulton kind of in a bit of trouble late, and Fulton did have to dig deep. Probably something he's going to have to do again if he wants to come out victorious against Inoue. But I think what Fulton hasn't faced is a fighter that's nearly as quick as Inoue, which is, I think, going to be one of the X factors in there. Is that he's used to being able to be the ring general and dominate with his advantages physically, which he has a great deal of. But Inoue's quickness, mentally, physically, his footwork, that's a new attribute that I think is going to throw him off a little bit.
Yeah, I was listening to Mike Tyson's podcast earlier this week, and listening to how I don't know if it's just hyperbole, right? The fans and everyone else, we are all entitled to our opinions, but he is really sold on Inoue, the monster, and saying that he's even better than Manny Pacquiao. So I was curious, this is a fight that, if I was Stephen Fulton, I don't even know if I would have taken this fight in terms of just legacy, but he is willing to leave his Philadelphia area, travel across the world, and go into the monster's backyard to face this guy, when arguably could he not have had Inoue come to him, as he is the holder of two the belts in the division. how is that possibly going to affect him come fight night? He's in the backyard of the monster. I don't know how many fans are traveling internationally to go watch Fulton fight, but what type of effect could that hinder his performance, or could that motivate him even more for a performance of a lifetime?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I give him a lot of credit for taking on Inoue. First of all, just Inoue in general, and second of all, Inoue in his backyard. I mean, I had a lot of optimism. Well, not optimism. I was very hopeful that this fight would happen earlier this year, but I didn't think it would happen quite this quickly and under these circumstances in Inoue's backyard. So I think Fulton, to his credit, has a lot of confidence in his ability to have taken this fight. Now, I am starting to get a little concerned based on some of the allegations Fulton has been throwing about VADA testing and Inoue's hand wraps, and it just seems like there is possibly, if the reports are correct, there is possibly some second thoughts maybe on Fulton's mind that might be indicative of the fact that he might be realizing that this is a very, very big challenge for him to defend his 2 titles when he could have taken a fight closer to home, at least domestically. He's not quite the superstar that, or he's not a superstar at all. I mean, he's really making such a career high payday because of Inoue's status instead of what he's been able to develop on his own. I think he's a tremendous fighter. I actually think he's close to the top 10 pound for pound, if not right at the end of the top 10 pound for pound based on the accomplishments he has so far. But he's not a household name, and he's taking a big risk moving over. So, we'll have to see how it plays out. I mean, I think if it wasn't for some of these allegations that he's throwing over, I would say that I'm not concerned with him psychologically going into this fight because of the fact that he's taken this fight and putting himself at such risk to begin with, when he could have just moved up to 126 and fought a guy like Brandon Figueroa, who he's beaten already, or just tried to move himself in position to unify the division, become undisputed at 122 against MJ Akhmadaliev, who I think he would beat with at least relative ease. I don't think that would be the toughest fight for him.
Right? Yeah. Didn't MJ lose to Palis?
You might be right. So I was so used. Yeah. I think he did. Yeah.
Well, that's the crazy part. As an American, and when we get to these lighter divisions, it's one of those, those small guys, like, what division are they in? It doesn't really matter. And then they go over to Japan, where it's such, I don't want to say a payday, but yeah, essentially a payday, where they get garnered a lot more respect. This is such a huge matchup. But for, like you said, Stephen Fulton to go over there, it's such a lot of credit to him. Kudos to him. He could have made it a little bit easier on himself fighting domestic to unify the entire division, which determining for Inoue, there's a lot riding in terms of it's a major legacy win for him if he were to do it. Now, conquer a 4th division. In terms of Fulton taking a loss here, right, where does that put him, I guess, in terms of his legacy, or essentially another payday later? Does he just kind of get pushed back to the end of the line? Does he possibly make another jump facing another belt holder?
I think anyone that's being objective would have to say that Fulton deserves kudos, win or loss, in this situation. If he loses to Inoue, I mean, obviously we'll have to see how he loses, what he looks like. If he just goes in there and just tries to survive, that's a much different scenario than if he goes out on his shield and makes a good account of himself overseas. But he's young. He's still. I mean, he's an excellent fighter, but I still think he's developing to the point that he's not quite at his peak yet. I think 126 is, pretty, I don't want to say wide open, but there's much less formidable challenges up there than Inoue at 122 would be, if the fight with Inoue doesn't go so well in terms of rematch prospects. I think unless he really, just goes over there and fights to survive, which I don't expect from him. I think he's too proud to do that. I think there are prospects in the future for him. Maybe even, the rematch that he was vying himself in position for against Brandon Figueroa for maybe, the WBC interim belt, or maybe a vacant WBC belt. I kind of lose track. But at 126, I think he could, put himself in position for a title shot with not too much time in between.
No, fair. Yeah, good assessment. May I add a small quip that there are too many damn belts to possibly be won by all these guys. Sanctioning fees, but that's another issue that I think the rest of the boxing universe is trying to grapple with. In terms of both of these fighters, right? Top of their game, best in the business. What are, let's say, the two keys for Inoue to win, or the two keys for Fulton to win this fight?
And I feel like it's definitely becoming a cliche when predicting these fights, but obviously whoever makes adjustments better. I mean, you can always say that when you get two guys at the top of their game, undefeated in their prime. Obviously, I don't see this as the type of matchup where one guy is going to be able to roll over the other. I mean, there's going to be some adversity on both sides in which they're going to have to overcome if they want to win this fight. Keys to victory. There are a lot of X factors that could make it very difficult to win, such as, if Inoue's power is just too overwhelming for Fulton, that would be probably an insurmountable type of adjustment that he could make. I think Inoue, if he wants to win this fight, well, let me just go out there and say I do think he is going to win this fight, and I think Fulton would have to be in a position to fight the perfect fight if he wants to win this fight. So really, on the direction of Fulton, I think he has to kind of make it physical in spurts. He has to be able to smother Inoue, make it uncomfortable for him in spurts. Obviously, he can't be in the pocket too long, or he puts himself at risk for some devastating counters or shots to the body. He needs to be able to control the center of the ring and be the ring general when he's not pressing the fight and smothering Inoue. He needs to be able to use that jab, which he has a very good jab. We need to see the best of his game on the outside and the best of his game on the inside. I kind of think of kind of a hybrid performance between how he looked against a guy like Angelo Leo, who he smothered to win impressively, and how he looked in spots against Brandon Figueroa, who he outboxed at a distance, or Daniel Roman, who he outboxed for 12 rounds. Basically, he needs to be able to pull both of those when he has to, and kind of keep Inoue, keep him guessing, keep him from getting set up and getting too comfortable, because Inoue, once he gets too comfortable, once he figures out his opponents, he'll usually just rolls over them, and it's usually the power that spells the end of it.
Awesome. You jumped ahead there. I was going to ask you, all right, hey, if we're betting people, who are you going to take?
No, I think Inoue is probably the safe bet, either by decision or late stoppage. It was hard for me to come to that. I mean, I didn't completely jump to that pick, but I think the more I think of it, the more I watch both fighters. Fulton has to fight the perfect fight to win, and I just favor Inoue at this stage in their careers.
I would have to agree with you on that assessment. Now, changing gears just a little bit, we have another huge super fight happening that's finally here, right? I think all of us have been salivating this moment, and many of us maybe even gave up that this fight was actually going to happen, especially with certain words that Crawford said, I don't need him in order to secure my legacy. Spence versus Crawford. If not the biggest fight of the year, is finally happening next weekend on Saturday. How excited are you, Alden?
No, I'm tremendously excited. It's really one of the best years for boxing in a very, very long time, at least as far as I can think back. I mean, how often can we have this same discussion about Inoue Fulton, a fight of that caliber, and Crawford Spence in the same week? And then if you think about it, Crawford Spence might not even be the highest grossing pay-per-view of the year, because we had Ryan Garcia and Tank Davis earlier this year. Not that Tank Davis and Ryan Garcia was anywhere near the type of matchup that this is, but it just goes to show how many great big crossover appeal type matchups boxing is delivering. I'm very excited. I like you have kind of lost faith that this fight was going to happen. Comments that Crawford made, and just the fact that we've been waiting for this many years. A similar feel that I had when it was 2009, 2010, Pacquiao Mayweather, of course. But I think this fight's going to deliver a lot more than Pacquiao Mayweather did, in the sense that stylistically, I think it's more compelling. And also, I think they're both in their prime, unlike Pacquiao and Mayweather when they faced off.
Right. I'm just very glad that we didn't have to postpone another year for this fight to happen. That was one major concern that I had. I was like, please do not tell me that they're going to wait so long that we're going to get a Pacquiao, Mayweather performance to where we all wasted our hard-earned money to just watch two guys at a geriatric stage of their career have this final face-off. Looking at both of their styles, they both have very similar opponents. We've been seeing nonstop promotion of the people who have faced both Crawford and Spence and how they handled it or how they were defeated by both of these top-tier boxers. Taking a look at their contrasting abilities, right? We have Spence, tremendous boxer, part of the 2012 U.S. Olympic team, devastating body puncher, versus Crawford, who was at the precipice of joining the U.S. Olympic team, but then took a different route, eventually relinquished his relationship with Top Rank to go off to become a free agent and finally making this fight happen, but also being known as a devastating finisher. How did these two styles, I guess, contrast one another to provide us such a compelling fight?
I think there's a lot of different ways that this fight can play out. I think we're going to see a lot of different adjustments being made. I think we're going to see a lot of different aspects and elements of their style that we haven't previously seen, at least too often with them, because they're so used to having such a technical upper hand on their opponents that we don't see certain dimensions of their game that is going to have to come out if either of them wants to win this fight on Saturday. I just see this fight creating a lot of different layers in both of their styles, which is one of the reasons I'm so excited for it. With that being said, I think speed is going to have a lot to do with why I believe Crawford is going to win the fight. I think he's much faster. I think he thinks a lot faster. And I think he has a decent amount of pop. And, he's not as physically strong as Errol Spence, but he's a crispier puncher in my opinion. And I don't think that's going to result in a knockout or anything, or even knockdowns. But I think he's going to have Spence's respect. I think he'll be able to counterpunch Spence and get his respect pretty early on. And the speed and the fact that I think whereas Spence is more, I think of Spence more as like a Marvin Hagler type. He's a more modern version of Hagler, of course, but in the sense that he's very consistent and he's very, very akin to mentally breaking down his opponents with continued pressure. He kind of goes more off muscle memory than Terrence Crawford does, in the sense that Crawford's, like Inoue, is a little more improvisational, and he's he just thinks and punches a little quicker. So I think, if I had to this fight, to be honest, the results never, I'm kind of putting myself out there, but the results never been too much in question for me. I've always kind of favored Crawford in a head-to-head for years if they were to face off. I mean, I would love to see the matchup, and I still am greatly looking forward to it, but I really have confidence that Crawford's style is going to, and his ability is going to enable him to victory.
That's a really good assessment. I've always leaned more towards the Crawford, especially with, I guess, some of their previous fights. For example, let's say Spence versus, oh no, I'm slipping his mind, Porter.
Yep.
Spence versus Porter, right? I watched that entire fight in one of the IMAXs around this local area. Very highly compelling, right? Action-packed. And then, of course, we get to the very end, and Porter saying the reason, Porter's father saying the reason why he lost was he's not following the game plan. But I'm like, your son put up a hell of a fight. Obviously, the decision didn't go his way. But then now watching Porter versus Crawford, and then dad is throwing in the towel. We should not do this. I do not want to see my son get hurt. And just seeing that one loss, or two losses for Porter, in two different contrasting styles there. You lost the decision on one end. The other decision, your father was afraid for your life and your physical well-being. So I've always leaned a little bit more towards Crawford, and I think it's just because of that devastating ability for him to be such a strong finisher. Now, I know Spence and Crawford have had a few words. The promotion from both of their ends have been kind of mellow, I guess.
Yeah.
They don't do a lot of trash talking.
Yeah, they're too respectful of one another.
Right, which I think it speaks a lot of their confidence in their own abilities. They don't need to do a lot of brash trash talking. They've known each other. They've been circling each other for such a long time, and they really do respect one another. I do remember Spence saying, hey, you got clipped by Gamboa at some point, right, when Crawford wasn't at the welterweight division quite yet. Do you think, and then maybe I could ask the same question of, Spence was not able to put out a blown up Mikey Garcia. And so looking at punch dexterity or resilience for one another, right? Who might have the upper hand in that situation?
Yeah, I never really gave too much credence to the whole, you've been clipped by Gamboa, you have a questionable chin. I mean, if you've been at the highest level of the sport for as long as Terrence Crawford or Earl Spence has been, I mean, you're going to get stunned at some point. And I mean, what what a lot of people overlook when they talk about Crawford being hurt by Gamboa or allegedly hurt by Gamboa is Crawford stopped him in the same round. That was one punch early in the round, and then Crawford, his leg did a little thing, and then he was right back on top and had him out of there. That was the best version of Gamboa at 135. Spence is not immune to being clipped either, really. I mean, I thought he was wobbled a little bit by Yordenis Ugas in his last fight, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, these are very strong fighters. I think even Danny Garcia has had some significant shots, eye-catching shots against him. Nothing to really put him in danger of being hurt or knocked down, but he's taken some big shots as well. I mean, that just goes along with, it's part of the territory of being a top-level fighter. Crawford, he was hurt against, or he was stunned at least against Kavaluskas, the monster, and came back to win. So I don't really view either of them as having a suspect chin. I don't think that's going to manifest itself in some significant vulnerability that's going to have some bearing on this fight.
Fair point, right? I only asked that question in terms of because it's such a huge fight, right? This could make or break careers. So I know Spence, and correct me if I'm wrong, I believe maybe even Crawford have both discussed the idea of maybe moving up to the light middleweight division, to the 154 division, right? And I find the conversation that we're having today regarding Inoue Fulton and Spence Crawford, we're catching these guys right before they may bump up to a new division, right? To a new landscape. For Errol Spence, I guess if we shift a little bit to the people helping them prepare them for this fight, Derek James has a large stable of fighters.
Yeah.
And so I guess for legacy defining fights, if Errol Spence were to win this one, there's a domino effect of success to be given to Derek James. Who would he possibly be fight coach of the year with a win like this?
I think definitely. I mean, he's got the opportunity to he's got another mega fight later this year with Jermell Charlo and Canelo Alvarez. And he's, had his huge share of success earlier this year. I think Derek James is kind of becoming the trainer to go to. There's a reason Brian Garcia picked him to go to. He's got a very steady stable of fighters, and he's not yet at the level where he's becoming like the celebrity trainer in the sense that people just go to him when their career is in crisis, and he doesn't. He has a very steady stable of guys. He's been with Earl Spence and the Charlos for a very long time, and I have a lot of respect for that.
And then on the other end, we have Bomac, with Crawford, right? Possibly a career-defining win for the coach as well as the fighter. How do we see this, I guess, playing out in terms of the welterweight division as a whole? These are the two guys at the very top tier of the division. And then we have a couple other guys coming up along the way, right? We have the big name right now that, depending on which fan you talk to, right, the big person to avoid is Jaron Ennis out of Philadelphia, right? How does this win or this fight define the welterweight division as a whole?
I don't know. I don't see either of them being too eager to fight Jaron Booth Ennis or anyone else in the welterweight division for that matter next. I think the way I see this playing out, if they don't have a fight that screams rematch or maybe even trilogy, if they're that evenly matched against each other, which is a possibility, I see both of them moving up to 154 or even north of that. I mean, I've even heard rumors from credible sources about Canelo's 3-fight deal, and I couldn't believe it when I heard it. Canelo's 3-fight PBC deal, one of them including Earl Spence.
Wow!
I was surprised at who the credibility of the sources that was even pondering that situation. But Earl Spence is he's a very, very big welterweight. He's getting towards the end of his career, and he's obviously looking to become a multi-division champion before it's too late. It's not quite the approach that Marvin Hagler took, in which he was perfectly satisfied just being the middleweight champion. Errol Spence wants to, move up. He's obviously very big for the division. I think he would fit just in at 154, but with Jermell Charlo moving up to face Canelo at 168, the division is pretty wide open. I mean, he's got Tim Tszyu, but that's not really a marquee fight. You could say the same thing for Terrence Crawford. I mean, there's a big void at 154 that can be filled. Obviously, I'd love to see the winner or either of them fight Jerome Busanis at 147 to defend the undisputed championship. But I'm not sure. I think Ennis might just be too dangerous and not big enough in superstar status for either of them to want to take that risk. But hopefully I'm wrong, because I'd love to see them fight Ennis next.
Right, yeah, I'm really big on the Philadelphia guy. Ennis, such a dangerous threat to the entire division as a whole. Now, let me ask you this. In terms of historical context for such a big fight that we're having this weekend, where does this fall in terms of historical significance?
That's a really that's a tough question to ask. I mean, there are reasons why this is a better matchup on paper than Mayweather-Pacquiao. I mean, that's just in closest proximity to, what they call fight of the century type affairs. I mean, this is for all four belts. This is the undisputed championship. Both are undefeated. Both are in their prime. And stylistically, the outcome, at least for many people, is more in doubt. Whereas I think most people would have favored Mayweather, or did favor Mayweather going into the Pacquiao fight. I mean, the odds on this fight are very, very even. I think 3-2 favorite Crawford, if I'm not mistaken, somewhere in that avenue. I think this is one of the best matchups at welterweight, maybe since Leonard Hearns won. Obviously, I got a few decades to think between Leonard Hearns 1 and Mayweather Pacquiao. No, actually, maybe De La Hoya Trinidad. I hate bringing that fight up because it brings back such bad memories of one of the biggest letdowns in boxing history, particularly let alone welterweight history. But yeah, you could definitely make a comparison in terms of the styles, or not even just the styles, but just like the magnitude of the contrasting styles. Obviously, it's not as big of a fight as De La Hoya Trinidad was, or Leonard Hearns was, but this is another best fighting the best in their prime type of situation that we hope boxing benefits from in the form of a great fight.
Couldn't agree more with you there, Alden. I think to wrap it all up, I guess, as fight fans, specifically boxing fight fans, we are spoiled, specifically within this year of 2023, the amount of great fights, unifiers that we are seeing, regardless of all, if I were to just briefly mention circus acts of Tyson Fury versus Ngannou.
Yeah.
But we are certainly spoiled, especially within this 1 week of July alone, with two super fights happening within 5 days of one another. Thank you so much, Alden, for joining us today on the TheFightCity Podcast, and I look forward to continuing our conversation here down the road.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Jeff.
Today, I'm joined with my own brother, Kevin Foose, to discuss Top Rank's card over this past weekend in Oklahoma. Kevin, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good. I'm excited to talk about the fights that just happened last night.
Awesome. Without any further delay, I'm going to jump right into Troy Isle versus Antonio Todd. What did you think of this middleweight matchup?
It was a good it was exciting to watch. It was just watching Troy progress, because I met him in 2019 in Alexandria when I started going to the gym down there. So just to watch him progress from the amateurs to the professionals, it's been quite a treat. He looked great. What's the word I'm trying to use here? Cerebral fighter. He just, every fight he has, I'm sorry if you hear some background noise. I have my son here with me. But He's a very cerebral fighter. He every fight he has, he shows something different. And this fight it kind of seemed that he was trying to show all the tools that he's acquired since going professional. Like defense was on point, punch selection, the combinations, running like throwing combinations behind the jab. He looked great.
Yeah, I really appreciated seeing him punch out with the jab and then go directly to the body. Now, Antonio Todd is 14-8 in his last 22 fights. He has been defeated by Anthony Sims Jr., Keyshawn Davis, and Joseph Hicks most recently. Joseph Hicks basically blew Antonio Todd out with the unanimous decision, which only further shows that Antonio Todd is actually very durable as an opponent. He's only been KO'd twice in his last 22 fights. So this was a really good developmental fight for Troy. I think it allows him to get rounds in, experiment in the ring, kind of on the job training with stuff he's learning from Coach K. Karoma in the gym specifically. He's now moved on to 9-0. But hopefully, we get to see Troy use a lot more of the tools that he's learning in the gym against hopefully more top-tiered opponents. As a middleweight, right? The middleweight division is it's a pretty strong division, right? And so hopefully we can just find a way to entice other boxers to get in there with Troy. Troy, is filling into his manliness, so to speak, filling out muscular wise. So hopefully we're also able to see a little bit more of a development in his power, right? Because it looks like those muscles aren't necessarily translating to knockouts. So hopefully we see them go back to the board to see how he can set up some knockouts. However, nothing to take away from Antonio Todd. Again, very strong opponent, but drops down to 14-9, and Troy now goes to 10-0, undefeated. Moving on, I'd like to discuss Keyshawn Davis, which unfortunately seems like the toxicity of social media plays a huge factor into this, but people are calling him overrated because he wasn't able to get his opponent, a very respectable opponent, Francesco Patera, from Belgium, a 28-3, out of there, and only went to the scorecards. Kevin, how do you assess Keyshawn Davis's most recent performance?
He gave himself a C- or C+ to a B- last night post fight interview. I've same with Troy. So when I went down there in Alexandria in 2018 or 19, I'd come across Keyshawn, and I've known about him because of his amateur pedigree. So to see him go to the professionals, it seemed like you said with Troy earlier, he's like coming into like his like growth. Like he looked much more muscular than the last time I saw him out, as I remember. Cerebral fighter, just like I said in the previous fighter, Troy. Punch selection was great. Footwork on point, defense. Like you probably saw that first round. Was it the first round? I can't remember what round it was where he was they commenting the Floyd Mayweather shoulder roll, and then he countered and it knocked him down in I think the first round. He just watching him just do his thing in the ring, you can tell he's very comfortable there. He's like he's a subject matter expert in the ring, just like a shark is the hunting the prey of the sea. He just knows what he's doing in there. I think the only thing I had issue with was it looked like he was toying around a little too much. After one of the rounds, he kind of was like running around the ring with his arms out like he was an airplane. I kind of didn't get that, but like I said, like he's very comfortable in the ring, so he must not felt threatened by his opponent that much. But like you said, I think everybody was kind of expecting, I myself included, was expecting him to kind of get it out early, but they went the full 10 rounds, which is good for him. He gained experience. It's the first time he's ever gone 10 rounds, and you could tell that his conditioning is on point as a world title, like once he becomes a world title holder, because he looked completely fine after the fight. Like he wasn't out of breath. He didn't look exhausted. He looked like he could go another 10 rounds. So whatever he's doing for conditioning, he needs like every professionally to take a page out of his book. But he looked great in the fight regardless. His opponent kind of surprised me in the aspect of he was from Belgium. Every time I come across a European fighter from a country that that's not really known for having, like highly skilled boxers like that, when they said Belgium, I was like, he's from Belgium? I was very confused. Like I've heard European fighters from like the UK, France once in a while, but Belgium, it just kind of threw me off.
Well, I will say, in terms of conditioning, Keyshawn Davis being a former Olympian, right? There is an expectation, I think, regarding Olympians, like their conditioning needs to be on point. They should not be gassed after a fight. He still is learning on the job, though. As a young professional, I mean, he is chomping at the bit, I think, to get a title fight. However, I think with this latest performance, he is humbling himself a little bit with the C+, B- performance. But Francesco Patera is no pushover. Yeah, from Belgium. Did win his last 10 fights. Most of them were in Belgium. One of them, I believe, was in the UK. But he did an interview with Ring Magazine looking to face the top guys in the division, one of them being Kamobosos Jr. However, throughout those 10 fights, right, COVID-19 did play a huge role. So, of course, getting him to travel internationally, either whether that's to Australia or here to the States for any of our guys, top guys in the division, would, I think, put a damper on those aspirations. However, he was called up. He did accept the fight with Keyshawn Davis. Keyshawn Davis does improve to now 9-0. Francesco Patera drops down to 28-4. Hopefully, though, we do get to see Keyshawn Davis do a step up in competition. I think the Andy Cruz fight, the Cuban who defeated Keyshawn Davis in the Olympics, who just recently signed with Matchroom and just had his pro debut, I think is a little bit still too early. Of course, Eddie Hearns and promotions, I think they're going to wait on that fight. They're going to let it marinate a little bit, as tradition is with boxing, before those two get in the ring. But hopefully we could see Keyshawn Davis step up the competition a little bit, see maybe if he is able to perform against a top 10 guy, for example, Raymond Miratala, Frank Martin, maybe the ghost who's with Derek James out of Spence's gym, and maybe, or Mexico's William Zepeda, maybe he'll step up to the plate. And of course, there is a lot of pressure with these guys who are on the rise, right? Kind of like a Berlanga. You're getting all these knockouts. You're doing it very flashy. And unfortunately, if you have a tougher than expected opponent and you don't get that knockout or that flashy performance, people start to question it. I don't think that's the case with Keyshawn Davis. Still a superstar to rise, especially since he's in the gym with Kay Kuroma, Troy Eiley, Shakur Stevenson. I think we're going to see a lot of good stuff from this kid. Moving on to the main event, which unfortunately seems to have drawn a lot of criticism. Mind you, warranted criticism. I just feel bad for George Kamobosos, who did defeat by unanimous decision Maxie Hughes, the Englishman. Kamobosos now moved on to 22-2. Maxie Hughes drops to 26, 7-2. Kevin, what did you think of that fight?
The word robbery, you hear that a lot when someone that you expect to win loses, and people in the boxing community, like a lot of people are like, oh, everything's, if your guy loses, you can't just say robbery, this and that, blah. Like the Lomachenko-Haney fight, I didn't want to say it was a robbery, but me personally on that fight, I thought Lomachenko won. But the sport is very subjective. But with this fight, oh my gosh, you got to use the word robbery. Like, come on now, one of the scorecards was what 117. I'm terrible with math. I can't remember what the number would be. But that was in favor of Kamobosos. I'm like, what was he watching? Like, I have no idea what this guy was watching. The Hughes guy was, and we're talking about knockouts, right? Like the sport of boxing, that's what everybody wants to see is a knockout. It's like NASCAR. Everybody wants to see a crash. But when you actually see the style and the artistry and the actual sport of boxing, hit and don't get hit, and that's what Hughes did to Kamobosos. I'm very confused as how they could say Kamobosos won. I am sad for Kamobosos that he's getting the short end of the stick all the time when he's like, I don't know why he thought this would be a good opponent because he just lost to Devin Haney twice in a row. He has the kind of same style as Hughes in regards, like, he's a pure boxer. Like, his whole point is like to hit and not get hit and counter when you do throw. And Kamobosos just looked like he looked like I'm gonna give him his due credit. He kind of looked like a tiger. Tigers, apex predators. The success rate of a tiger and the highest percentage of getting an actual meal is 20%, and they usually average between that and 10%. I think on this aspect, he was that 8%. It should have been an L for him. I have a lot of respect for Kamobosos. When he fought Teofimo, I think I was like one of the only guys to say that he was going to beat Teofimo Lopez. And then when he did, I was to the moon for him. But like, sometimes you got to be a realist. Like, is he still like within the top 10 of his weight class. I don't know. Like, I do feel terrible for the Hughes guy. He even commented saying he kept felt kind of silly wearing the cowboy hat after the losses. I feel kind of silly wearing this in here. I think everybody thought that Kambosos lost, but I mean, Kambosos in the post-fight interview stuck to his gun, saying, "No, I thought I won. I thought it was a fair judgment, this and that." I think they asked him if he would give him a rematch, and he kind of like beat around the bush about it. If I was him, and he wanted to be humble, he should have just straight up said it. But the fight game, you can't save face like that. You gotta stick with what you are, and you say you're the winner. So overall, I honestly, to be totally realistic, I wouldn't recommend that anybody watch this fight unless they're trying to learn the sport about how to hit and not get hit. Watch Hughes. This is a great learning experience for guys that are trying to get into boxing. That's a great film study. Just as long as you're not studying Kambosos in that fight.
Well, you said earlier you feel bad that Kambosos is getting the short end of the stick. I mean, he got the better end of the stick in this fight. He won a controversial decision. There was that one card that was 117 to 111. He was, I think, getting caught quite a bit. I do believe that the judges got it wrong with this fight, right? Maxie Hughes, he's already in his mid-30s. I already said his record was 26-6-2. He definitely should have got the nod in this one. His left hand, because he's a southpaw, was reaching down the middle the whole night. He did drop Kambosos. He did actually cut Kambosos' right eye open. And then, of course, there was the accidental headbutt from Kambosos to Maxie Hughes, which made a cut above his left eye. However, Hughes was boxing beautifully, counter punching, which is pretty much what I really wasn't expecting that. However, watching his performance against Kid Galahad, maybe we should have had a better understanding that this is how he boxes. He did defeat Kid Galahad back in December, winning the IBO title. Unfortunately, with this loss, George Kamobosos, back in the win column, now 22-2, receives the IBO belt. It is quite unfortunate. This is the sport of boxing, however, right? I feel bad in terms of Kambosos getting short in the stick. He keeps ending up on these controversial decisions, whether that's winning or losing. It's just hopefully the next fight for him is a win, except people were entertaining the idea of Kambosos versus Tank Davis, or they even asked Shakur Stevenson, would you like to face Kambosos? And Shakur Stevenson was like, no, because I don't want to be on the bad end of a decision, as well as, this I don't want to be part of a controversial fight, as well as, he would outland Kambosos, and that would be a bad night for Kambosos. What were you going to say, Kev?
Oh, I'm sorry. I want to give Kambosos credit though, because the Hughes guy, very slick, but he was being a little dirty. He landed at least I counted 2 straight elbows to Kambosos' face, and Kambosos, he didn't say anything to the ref. He just ate it and then just kept pressing forward. But they were clear, dirty hits. So I don't know if that was a little, this decision was karma on his ass, because if anybody got hit with those, definitely, it's what is this, UFC? Well, I don't know if they throw elbows in UFC or whatnot, but he landed 2 clean, dirty elbows, but the ref didn't say anything. So I don't know if the ref just didn't see it because of the angles, and then there was a headbutt, but they were very, very dirty. But he still ended up getting an L, which is unfortunate, but he did box beautifully. And when you said Shakur Stevenson, that was funny, because you probably saw the post-fight after the fight when he walked up and he gave his opinion to Kambosos, and then he straight up just started, talking shit to him, saying, "I will beat you. I will beat your ass. I will take you out. You don't want to get in the ring with me." Right. I thought that was funny. Yeah, he said, and they did agree. Shakur did agree. If nobody wants to fight him, he will take that fight against Kambosos. If I was Kambosos, I definitely would just stay away, because I don't know why he's trying to pick a fight with Shakur Stevenson, because he sparred with Pacquiao for many years. Pacquiao, southpaw, southpaw. But the thing is, you could tell he's not comfortable with southpaws, because he's only fought 2 southpaws in his whole career, Kambosos, and now he's trying to pick a fight with one of the best southpaws that you can think of. I just don't understand where it's I think he wants to. He has that omen of he wants to get a controversial win, which I don't ever see happening. I don't see him beating Shakur, but I don't know why he's trying to egg that fight.
I mean, part of it, I think, is a payday. I hate to be a little too harsh on Kambosos. I really like Kambosos, especially back to the days that he was a sparring partner for Manny Pacquiao. The win against Teofimo Lopez was a huge win for him. It propelled him to, I don't want to say superstardom, but that was a win that I think a lot of people were counting against him. However, he is a very solid B-side opponent. If he's able to cash out regarding a fight with Shakur Stevenson, that would be awesome. However, Shakur Stevenson doesn't bring a lot of money to the table. He is an avoided prospect, right? They're not prospect anymore. He is ascended beyond that at this point. But if it is a cash fight for Kambosos, I don't blame him for wanting to take that fight. The guy is, I will say, old school kind of gladiator style warrior, looking to take on these harder opponents. But after a performance like this against Maxie Hughes, I just don't see how he beats Shakur Stevenson. I know Tim Bradley was really upset. He did not hold back any criticism on air. Claimed Maxie Hughes was robbed of the decision, which I can't necessarily say I disagree with. Shakur Stevenson also expressed his disagreement with the outcome, but Maxie Hughes, hopefully he's able to rebound from this controversial decision. Unfortunately, this is the sport of boxing. I would like to see the referees held to the judges as well held to a higher standard. Hopefully we can find a way to mediate this type of situation to prevent them from happening. However, this wouldn't be the red light district of sports if we did not have controversial decisions. Kevin, we do have an upcoming episode where I sit down with Alden Chodash to discuss Inoue versus Fulton this upcoming week, as well as at the end of this week, Spence versus Crawford. Two huge fights for the sport of boxing. How do you see, let me ask you your opinion, what do you see happening with Inoue Fulton?
I love Inoue, everything about him, footwork, defense, offense. Like he's just like one of those guys that if you were coming into the sport and you were trying to learn, like that's who you watch. I can't say anything bad about him. I really can't. Like he's proven that he's a world title holder. Like he's undisputed in his original weight class that he he fought for the Muhammad Ali trophy and stuff, beat the Nair. But he's bumping up, and instead of like what most guys do is trying to find someone of like a gatekeeper, he's just going straight for the big dogs. Fulton's the underdog apparently in this. I would love to see Fulton bring home the bring home the win. He's an American who doesn't want to root for an American. He's not somebody that you hear of too much lately or often, but of late you have, because he's fighting Inoue, which the only thing this fight I'm only upset about is on a Tuesday at like starting at 4:30 in the morning. But that's out of our control. And I think he's going to show us something that we haven't seen from him. I think his last fight, there was a little. Some people were upset when he fought. What's his name? Figueroa. Is that how you pronounce that guy's last name?
Figueroa.
And I know Figueroa. I'm sorry. Thank you. And I know he was upset at the controversial win, and because I remember in the post-fight interview they kind of like argued in the ring a little bit. But I've been watching Fulton, some of his videos of him training, and he looks slick. He looks clean. He looks good. I think this is going to be a great matchup. The only thing is just you got to wake up early to watch it, or you catch the replay.
Awesome. Yes. What do you think regarding, I guess, Spence Crawford now? That's going to be a week here just at the end of this week. If you were a betting man, who would you go for?
Oh man, every time I try to make a bet, I always lose the bet. And I keep flipping every week. Someone asks me and I'll just flip my answer because I just can't decide. Like they're both at the pinnacle of the sport right now. Like Crawford, the one thing you hear about him is he's got the dog in him, and he's ambidextrous, which is actually very scary because you don't see that too often. Because let alone there's guys that can barely fight in their original stance in the first place, whether that be orthodox or southpaw. But this guy can do both, which is very scary. Spence, he was an Olympian. He's been in the game for a while now, raised in it just like Crawford. He's fought many opponents, very caliber, opponents. I really don't know. They both have their good attributes. Like I said, Crawford's ambidextrous. I think he has a little more snap behind his punches. I think he's a little quicker to the draw. He does have the tendency to be a little too aggressive, I think, sometimes in fights. where you can tell like he smells blood. He's trying to take his opponent out early, but sometimes he'll have to pull back because it wasn't at the right time. But then Spence, he's the naturally bigger opponent. This is his weight class. He has the heavier punches from what everyone keeps saying. The speed, I would just give it to Crawford a little more. But Spence isn't no slouch himself, and he has a chin. After that car crash, who did he fight right after the car crash? Was it Danny Garcia?
Yep.
And Danny Garcia's got popped. Now I know people are going to say, "Oh, well, like, he bumped up to that weight class." So, but still, Danny Garcia's still a lethal opponent, and he still took the challenge. And ever since the car crash, he has fought top tier opponents. He's not backed down from anybody. He didn't take an easy fight after his car crash. So you can tell, like, even after that accident, and we saw the photos where his face was kind of messed up. He didn't care. I think the worst thing was, he said, when he got caught against you guys, it's because he said his mouthpiece, his teeth were still being fixed. And so he was just afraid of losing his teeth. So when his mouthpiece fell out, he was worried, like, I need that. And then he got caught because, you always got to protect yourself. And he just kind of was worried in the moment of his own teeth. But he ate the hit, and he still won. So I really don't know. I keep flipping my answer on that. I have really no idea. Everyone keeps talking about it's going to be a knockout. I really don't see one of these guys getting knocked out. I really don't. I think they're both quality. Like, they're both very durable. I see this going to a decision. I'm afraid it's going to be a controversial decision. Unless it's a draw.
Right. Well, hopefully, this is the red light of all sports. So, hopefully it doesn't come to a controversial decision. However, I wouldn't put it past the sport itself to have and result in one. I say worst comes to worst. If there is a controversial decision, we get a rematch and then maybe even possibly a trilogy. However, that wraps up today's episode of The Weekend That Was, with a small glimpse of fights to come. Thank you so much, Kevin.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Hey everyone, it's Jeff here. If you like today's episode, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out all of our other content on TheFightCity.com. The website link can be found in our show notes. Till next time.